Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vaetchanan, Tavshin Pei Gimel. We will start from the beginning of the Parsha, which is Perek Gimel, chapter 3, Pasuk Chav Gimel, verse 23. Vaetchanan el Hashem, and I pleaded with Hashem, Ba'esahi Lemar, at that time saying. This is Moshe saying how he pleaded with Hashem, as we see, to allow him to enter the land of Israel. After the sin of Mei Meriva, where Moshe hit the rock instead of speaking to it, Hashem decreed that he will not enter the land of Israel. Now Moshe is describing how he implored Hashem to allow him to come in, to basically take away that decree and allow him to enter the land of Israel. So Moshe says, Hashem Elohim, my Lord Hashem, Atoha Chiloisa, you have begun. Laharis has avdacha, to show your servant, Es gadlacha, your greatness, Vesyadcha chazaka, and your mighty hand, Asher mi'el b'shemaim v'aretz, who is like God in heaven and earth, and earth, Asher yasech ma'asecha v'chigvurasecha, that can do like your actions and like your mighty deeds. Ebrana ve'ere es haaretz hatova, let me cross over now, and I will see the good land, Asher be'ever hayarden, that's on the other side of the Jordan River, Hahara Teifazeh, this good mountain of Alavanain and the Lavanain. Okay, so where we're going to focus on is Moshe's, so to speak, introductory words, how Moshe describes what he first said to Hashem, and then he made his request. So Moshe says, you have begun to show your servant your greatness, your strong hand. Who is like God in heaven and earth that can do like what you do? Okay, that's the first thing that he says. And then he says, let me cross into the land. What's the connection between the two things? What exactly is the connection between Moshe saying to Hashem, you have begun to show your servant your greatness, and who is like you, let me cross into the land? What's the connection between the two? That's going to be the question that we're going to be focusing on tonight. And we will start with the commentary of Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra explains like this. First, he explains he starts explaining Pasuk Chav Daled, verse 24. Atah chiloisa, you have begun. Amar chachamei achachamim, atah chiloisa, laharis eskadlacha b'shemaim v'aretz b'masim b'shnei g'olam bab. Moshe is saying, you have begun to show your greatness in heaven and earth in the actions by which the world runs. Meaning, Moshe is saying to Hashem, you have begun to show your servant your greatness through the wondrous world you've created. You know, there's a beautiful, wonderful world in front of us, in front of me, in front of everyone. And by what you do in the world, you have begun to show your servant, referring to himself, your greatness. Your greatness referring to the greatness that is manifest in the world and just the way the world runs. If a person examines and examines how the world runs, how Hashem has made the world, how he has the world running, there's a tremendous greatness and wisdom that's involved in that a person can perceive. A person can perceive the greatness of Hashem in the natural world. So Moshe says, you have begun to show your servant your greatness, the greatness in how you run the world, Vesyadcha chazaka, and your mighty hand, ba'isei shenasu al yodai, through the miracles that were done through Moshe. Right? Hashem did miracles through Moshe. So Moshe is saying, you've begun to show your servant the greatness that's manifest in nature and the miracles that you have done. Until now until it's known in the world now, ki ein kel, there's no one like you, Hashem. There's no one like you. There's only one God. V'hatam takiv b'shamayim sheshama malachim v'hatzava u'ba'aret sheshama chayitz b'nei adam. And when it says that there's no God like you in heaven and earth, it means basically in the heavenly worlds where the angels are. There's no one. It's known through this world and the miracles that Hashem does that there's no one like Hashem in the heavens. And there's like Hashem in the earth where the animals and people are. Okay? Now, then it says, who is like God in heaven and earth that will do like your actions? meaning who's able, right? But the Bartanura says, I'm sorry, Kamasecha, like your actions that are all Shaghem Kulam B'Chachma, that they're all done with wisdom, and like your might, meaning in the might and the strength and the capability and the control that Hashem has over the world. So Moshe's starting point is to focus on the world and the miracles by which we see Hashem's greatness, and then know it is like Hashem in the wisdom of his actions or in the might and the greatness of his actions. Okay, that's what the pasuk says.
This is any mention about free from Mitzrayim?
That's not the point here. That's included in the miracles. That's included in the miracles. But according to the Ibn Ezra, Moshe's focus is that you have begun to show your servant the greatness that is manifest in the creation in the world, your strong hands of the miracles. But through this, it's known there is no one like Hashem in the heaven and the earth that can do like his actions, the wisdom and greatness of his actions, and like his might and strength and capability. Okay, what's the next thing that Moshe says? Let me cross over. We don't yet have the connection between the two. Now, before I suggest what the connection are, let me just conclude the comment of the Ibn Ezra, which is a fascinating idea. The Tamzu HaParsha, the reason for this section of the Torah, meaning the Ibn Ezra is saying, why do we need to know this for? What is the point of this? What is the point of this story? Of that Moshe is talking to Hashem. I asked Hashem, he said no. What's the point? Don't forget, until now, Parshas Devarim, what was Parshas Devarim? A review of everything. A review of the sin of the spies, of appointing judges, of the wars with Sichon and Og, and the land on the other on the side of the Jordan, not Eretz Yisrael, being given to the 2.5 tribes. These are all review of events that involved and were relevant to all of Klal Yisrael, to all the Jewish people. What is the point of this story? What is the point of now bringing in this whole business about Moshe asked Hashem to let me in the land, as we didn't read the pasuk yet, but Hashem said no more asking. Hashem refused Moshe's request. What's the point of this? Why is Moshe sharing this with the Jewish people now? Says the Ibn Ezra, the time Parsha, the reason for this Parsha is L'chavev es Eretz Yisrael, to make the land of Israel beloved to the Jewish people. The Ma'aretz Chaviva, the land will be beloved to them. Yishmu mitzvahs Hashem, they will keep Hashem's mitzvahs. Shayiglu mimena, so not to be exiled from it. Moshe pleaded with Hashem, please let me into the land. That shows from Moshe's pleading from Hashem to annul the decree and let him into the land, how much he loves Eretz Yisrael. If the Jewish people are shown by Moshe how much he loves Eretz Yisrael, that will make Eretz Yisrael beloved by the Jewish people. They'll realize what kind of a special and precious land it is. And when they know that, they will make sure to prevent themselves from being exiled by not keeping the mitzvahs. So the reason why Moshe is interjecting this is because Parshas Vaetchanan is going to get into discussing how Hashem says that, Hashem talks about giving the Torah, and it talks about the Jewish people being in the land and being in the land for a long time, and then becoming corrupt and worshiping idols, and by worshiping idols, they're going to be going to be exiled. So the introduction to all that is to realize how special Eretz Yisrael is. How do they realize that? How do they see that? Moshe pleads with Hashem to take away the decree. Hashem still says no, but Moshe tried his best. That shows how special Eretz Yisrael is. That's the introduction, that if Moshe considers Eretz Yisrael so beloved and so great, the Jewish people understand its importance and do what it takes not to remain in the land and not to be exiled. So there's I heard that the Dibna Magid gave a parable to bring out this idea. Okay, you ready for a parable, a story? Once upon a time, okay, there was a small town and it had a rabbi. And the rabbi served there for a number of years. He was a very beloved person to the community. but it came time for him to move on. His family was growing. He needed more parnas. He needed to make more money. And therefore, he applied for a rabbinate in a bigger town where he'd get more pay. He could support his family. And he got the job. Now, many years ago, when a rabbi was going to go to that new town, they would send an entourage from the new town to pick him up. They would come and get him from where he used to live, and they would take him to the new town. Okay, so the day came, the entourage from his new position, the city of his new position, they sent the entourage to come and get him, and he was about to join them when the gabbai of the shul, the gabbai of his shul from this small town that he was leaving, came and fell to the ground and pleaded with the rabbi, Rebbe, don't leave us. How can you leave us? We need you. You can't leave us. So the rabbi was like, what's going on here? This is not something new. We discussed this before. This was known. I was going. I announced it. Everybody knew. Like, what are you doing now that you're pleading with me to leave and not to leave? So the gabbai gets himself up and whispers to the whispers to the rabbi, Rebbe, I know you're leaving, but if they'll see how much, if the entourage from the new city will see how much we want you to stay, and they'll see how special you are to us, that'll add to the respect they have for you. Meaning, he was doing it in order to show how beloved the rabbi was, and that would impress the members of the new city. So in a similar way, says the Ibn Maggid, like the Ibn Ezra said, Moshe is talking about how beloved Eretz Yisrael was, and how he was, and the importance of why he told this to the Jewish people was, again, to show that, it was decreed upon him that he can't leave, but that he can't enter, but nonetheless, he implored Hashem, he pleaded with Hashem to be able to get in, to show the Jewish people how special Eretz Yisrael is. Okay, so this is a very interesting idea from the Ibn Maggid explaining what is the point of knowing this episode of Moshe pleading with Hashem to send him back to the land of Israel. It's about showing the Jewish people how special Eretz Yisrael is. Okay, but we started with a different question, and that question was, what's the connection between Pasuk Chav Daled, verse 24, where Moshe talks about that you have begun to show your servant your greatness, and then the request in Pasuk Chav Hey, verse 25, let me cross into the land. So I'd like to make the following suggestion. Okay, tell me what you think. Moshe said, you have begun to show your servant your greatness. Moshe is saying, Hashem, this is Moshe Rabbeinu, and he's saying, you've begun to show me. That means that there's more to see somehow. There's more to see. Moshe is saying, you have begun to show me. If you let me into Eretz Yisrael, I'll be able to see even more. You've begun to show me your greatness. If you let me into Eretz Yisrael, I'll be able to see even your greatness even more. That's the argument that Moshe is saying. And Eretz Yisrael is a very unique place. Eretz Yisrael is the place that is the closest to Hashem. It is the place where we connect to Hashem on the greatest level. When you can connect to Hashem in the greatest level in Eretz Yisrael, that will be the way by which you can recognize Hashem's greatness even more. You'll recognize Hashem's greatness in nature even more. You'll see, Moshe knows that in Eretz Yisrael, there's going to be miracles. There's going to be more miracles that are going to take place. Moshe is saying, you've begun to show me your greatness. Now let me into the land of Israel, while I'll be able to see your greatness even more. That's the argument of Moshe, perhaps here according to the Ibn Ezra. Now, to answer this question from another commentary, the commentary Rabbeinu Bachya asked this question as to the connection between Moshe's request to enter the land of Israel and the introduction. What is that connection? Says the Rabbeinu Bachya. The connection is like this, that in essence, what Moshe is referring to here, when he says, you have begun, first of all, he starts off addressing Hashem Elohim, my master Elohim, my master God. You have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. What is the greatness and mighty hand that Moshe is referring to? Says Rabbeinu Bachya, he's referring to the giving of the Torah. That is what's going on here. Let me read it to you. Yivur inyan matan Torah shu'atachlas mavukish me adam. The point here is to focus on the giving of the Torah, which is the goal that is asked of man. Man was to receive the Torah. Ulakach Amar es avdacha. Therefore, Moshe called himself your servant. Moshe Rabbeinu was the trustworthy servant of Hashem through which the Torah was given. So therefore, Moshe refers to himself as you have begun to show your servant, meaning I was your servant. I was your trustworthy servant that through me you gave the Torah. You have shown your servant your greatness. By Matan Torah, what do we find the pasuk? That pasuk is going to be later on in the Parsha, which is Parakeh pasuk Chaf Aleph. Right after Moshe repeats the 10 Commandments, it says, Chaf Aleph, pasuk Chaf Aleph, verse 21. Vaetchanan, and you said, meaning after, this is when Moshe is describing how the Jewish people came to him after they heard Hashem's voice. Hey, Naranu Hashem Elokeinu, behold, Hashem our God has shown us, here at the giving of the Torah, es kavaydai ves gadlai, his glory and his greatness. So Matan Torah is referred to as Hashem, the giving of the Torah is referred to as Hashem's greatness. Therefore, in our pasuk, when it says your greatness, it means your giving of the Torah. V'esyadcha chazaka, and your strong hand is also referring to the giving of the Torah, and that is from the other half of the other part of the pasuk where the Jewish people say, right? They say, "You have behold, Hashem has shown us His glory, His greatness. V'eskoilei shamanu mitoich ha'esh, and we have heard His voice from the fire." That refers to that is what we're referring to His strong hand, Hashem's might. When the Jewish people heard Hashem's voice from the fire on Har Sinai, that was something that instilled in them a tremendous awe of Him, a fear of Him, and they saw His greatness, His strength. So, Gadlai v'Yadcha Chazaka are two aspects of the giving of the Torah. Hashem Mikel b'Hashemayim v'Aretz. The Moshe says, "Who is like Hashem in heaven and earth?" There we have a pasuk that says, and again, this is in. Yeah, this pasuk says, just find it here. Just 1 second, I'm just looking at the pasuk. Okay, can't find the pasuk right now, but it says, can't find the pasuk, but he says, when it says that Moshe says, "Who is like God in heaven and earth?" That is corresponding to the pasuk, "Min hashamayim mishmiachas koila liasreka." From the heavens, he made his voice heard to you in order to liasreka, in order to bind you. On the land, he showed you his great fire. That's what it means, Mikel b'Hashemayim v'Aretz, in heaven and earth, referring to, it says, Min Hashemayim, from heaven, he made his voice be heard. And on the land, he showed you his great fire. That's who is like Hashem in heaven and earth. Hashayasech ma'asecha b'Hashemayim v'chivreisecha b'Aretz, who can do like your actions in heaven and like your great mighty deeds in the land. And that is why Moshe began with the words, when he was pleading with Hashem, he said, Hashem Elokim. Why? Because the 10 Commandments start with, Anech Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. And therefore he used similar words when he began talking to Hashem. Okay? So according to Rabbeinu Bachya, the whole point of this introduction of Moshe is to talk about, you, Hashem, have begun to show your greatness. You began through me to give the Torah. You began through me to give the Torah. Now, V'kish Aksuvim Kain, now the lead into their quest is, Ata Chiloisel says Torah al Yadi. You began to give the Torah through me. Vein Ikar HaTorah Ela Ba'aretz. And the main fulfillment of the Torah is in the land of Israel. V'amascha b'mitzvah oimim le'gmar. This is a phrase that we find. If somebody begins doing a mitzvah, we tell them, finish it. Imkein ereno ve'ereh. Let me cross over and I will see. So Moshe is beginning the first pasuk. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, you began to show your servant your greatness, means you started the giving of the Torah through me. And you showed through me your greatness in Torah, your power through Torah. All the different words in the pasuk allude to different parts of the giving of the Torah. And now Moshe says you began to show your greatness. That means you began the process of giving the Torah through me. And now to finish the job of giving the Torah, which is now to continue teaching the Torah and continue passing on the Torah to the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, that's finishing the job. Allow me to finish the job. I started the mitzvah, allow me to finish it. That's the connection that between the pasuk, the introductory pasuk, and Moshe's request. The pasuk before, pasuk Chavdalad, verse 24, is referring to the giving of the Torah, and Moshe is saying, you've begun the process of giving the Torah through me, through your servant. I was a trustworthy servant to do it, and now allow me to finish the job by doing it in Eretz Yisrael. Now, this needs explanation, because you might think, well, is there a difference in fulfilling the Torah outside of Eretz Yisrael, fulfilling the Torah inside of Eretz Yisrael? I mean, we know there are certain mitzvahs we can only fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. We know that. But Moshe already basically taught the Jewish people all those mitzvahs. He taught them all those mitzvahs. Now it's a question of, you need Eretz Yisrael to fulfill them. But that shouldn't be part of Moshe's continuing job, so to speak, of giving the Torah. He received the Torah from Hashem, and he gave over the mitzvahs to the Jewish people. Some of them, they could start in the desert. Some of them, they couldn't. But from the point of what he was doing of being Hashem's servant, Hashem's agent to give the Torah, is what's gonna be different in Eretz Yisrael, other than just the fact that now it's possible to do all those mitzvahs. It's not saying here that Moshe wants to be able to do all those mitzvahs. There's a medrash that says, why did Moshe decide go into Eretz Yisrael? He wanted to do the mitzvahs that can only be done in Eretz Yisrael. But that's not what Rabbeinu Bachya here is saying. Rabbeinu Bachya here is saying that Moshe is saying that my job, my being the agent, my being the means of passing on the Torah to the Jewish people is not done yet. It's not completed yet. It's not completed. It needs to be continued in Eretz Yisrael. What is Eretz Yisrael different? More than just the fact that now more can be done. And perhaps that is what Rabbeinu Bachya just means. He means to say that, there are mitzvahs that need to be done in Eretz Yisrael, and, I guided the Jewish people on learning the mitzvahs and on doing whatever mitzvahs they can in the desert. And now I can finish that job of leading them in the Torah when they can practically do the mitzvahs. But there's another idea here. And this idea is really based on the writings of Ramban Nachmanides. The Ramban has a very interesting principle. According to Ramban, there is, of course, certain mitzvahs that are obligatory, whether you're in Eretz Yisrael or not, and certain mitzvahs that can only be fulfilled in Eretz Yisrael. That's for sure. But the Ramban argues that even the mitzvahs that you don't need Eretz Yisrael to do, Eretz Yisrael is the place where mitzvahs are meant to be done. That's where the mitzvahs are meant to be done. Even a mitzvah that you can do that you're obligated to outside of Eretz Yisrael, really, the place for its true fulfillment is Eretz Yisrael. That's where they're really supposed to be done. That's where they're really meant to be done. I believe the wording of the Ramban, I believe his wording is that mitzvahs that you do outside of Eretz Yisrael are like practice for the ones you do in Eretz Yisrael. But that is where the mitzvahs are really meant to be done. When Moshe Rabbeinu said, allow me to finish the job, it meant allow me to finish the job in the sense now that we have the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael, all the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. Now that we can have all the mitzvahs, now that all the mitzvahs come to their completion, come to their highest level of fulfillment in Eretz Yisrael, allow me to finish that process. So when Moshe Rabbeinu was saying that you begun to give the Torah through me, and the Ein Iker HaTorah Ela Ba'aretz, the Torah's primary place is only in the land. That doesn't sound just like, the wording here doesn't just sound like the idea of, oh, now we can fulfill the mitzvahs that can only be fulfilled in Eretz Yisrael. The wording is Ein Iker HaTorah Ela Ba'aretz. The Torah is primarily meant to be kept in the land of Eretz Yisrael. Means to say the fulfillment of the Torah, of all the mitzvahs of the Torah, are meant to be in Eretz Yisrael. That is where their true fulfillment is done. So Moshe says, let me continue that. Let me be part of finishing that job. The Jewish people not only, they've received the mitzvahs outside of Eretz Yisrael, but now they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael where their fulfillment of the mitzvahs is going to be on its truest level, on its fullest level. So I started the mitzvah of giving the Torah to the Jewish people, teaching the Torah to the Jewish people before they had the chance for this complete fulfillment. And now allow me to finish. Now allow me to continue teaching them and leading them in Torah at the level of where they can have their truest fulfillment, their highest level of fulfillment. That's what the Rabbeinu Bechaya means when he says, you have begun to show me, give the Torah through me. Ein Iker HaTorah Ela Ba'aretz. The primary fulfillment of the Torah is only in the land of Eretz Yisrael, and that doesn't mean that there's certain things you can only complete the Torah in Eretz Yisrael. That's not what it sounds like. He sounds like he's saying this idea of the Ramban of Nachmanides, Ein Iker HaTorah, the whole Torah, its primary place is only the land. Okay, so that means there's more to do, there's more to complete. Some of you starts a mitzvah, you tell him finish it. Let me finish the job. I started the mitzvah, I should finish the mitzvah. Hashem said no. But according to Rabbeinu Bachya, that's what's going on here. That's the connection. That's what that's how these two psukim come together. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to Hashem, you have begun to show your servant your greatness. That means you began to give the Torah through me. And now let me cross over the land so I can finish the job, so that now I can teach and lead the Jewish people into fulfillment and to fulfill the Torah in its fullest and truest level in the land of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, very good. Have a good evening, and everybody should have should fast well, should have a meaningful fast and fast well, and may this be the last Tisha B'Av that we'll ever have to experience. Have a wonderful evening.